Welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast. I'm Bela Gandhi, the founder of Smart Dating Academy and your host. I started Smart Dating Academy in 2009 because I had this crazy knack of giving people dating advice that actually worked, that I took. I've been married for almost 25 years, and now my company helps people to date smarter and to find love. This podcast is meant to bring more love into your life, no matter where you are and what you do. And we're here to bring more life into your love. Smart daters, welcome to this week's podcast. I am so excited to have with us today I would say she's an inspiration, a guru. I've read her books, love her, Dr. Jenny Taitz. Dr. Jenny, welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast. You are such a luminary. You are faculty at UCLA. You're a clinical psychologist. You're a prolific author. Thank you for being here with us.
I can't wait to talk to you, Bella. Thank you for having me.
And not only, I have to tell you, Dr. Jenny has an amazing new book called Stress Resets, which hang in for the episode because we're going to teach you a lot about how to just tamp yourself down in this time where we all could use just a little bit of that. But Dr. Jenny, I learned about you from a client that was a therapist, and our clients are amazing people and they will share resources with us. And a client messaged me and said, Bella, you're going to love this book called How to Be Single and Happy, and gave me a link to your book. And I love this client and she's brilliant. Anything she recommended, I went out, I bought it. For those of you that are listening, you can't see, I'm holding up the book, but it's called How to Be Single and Happy. Tell us how to be single and happy. Tell us your story.
Sure. So I am a clinical psychologist. I specialize in evidence-based approaches. So I'm really excited about giving people tools. So they're not in therapy for decades, but they graduate after, 10 to 12 sessions, because I feel like good therapy should teach you tools so you kind of create a new path forward. And I started to notice that repeatedly clients I was seeing would say something along the lines of, I've never been to therapy before, but dating has made me feel terrible, hopeless, full of self-doubt, wondering what's the point? Really has stolen my life from me and has undermined so many of the accomplishments that I've worked hard to achieve. I've had people that were kind of the first people in their families to go to college and went on to go to the best colleges that tell me things like they feel like a total loser because they just can't get the guy or the girl. And I was just struck how even the smartest, most growth-oriented people were citing lines from dating books that just seemed sexist and cruel and lacking any sort of wisdom. And in parallel to working with clients who were going through a lot of dating stressors, and which is even multiplied since this moment, because apps have really become so much more popular in the past decade since I wrote this book, or since the past 8 years since I wrote this book. And in parallel, I started to really notice that a lot of the myths that my clients were struggling with were things that I also struggled with. I really also on some level believed that my happiness would somehow jump when I met my person, and that things going well in your love life would kind of elevate your whole life. And I started to apply a lot of the wisdom that I was learning as a therapist trained in mindfulness-based behavioral therapies to myself. And I found it really, really helpful. And I love to geek out. And so I actually wanted to study hey, how happy does marriage actually make someone? What are the key sources of unhappiness? Is kind of the implicit messaging all around us, whether on The Bachelor or magazine covers, or kind of the way people kind of share about their love lives on social media. Is that true? Is does meeting your plus one suddenly make you whole? And I was really struck by the fact that it absolutely does not. And I found this really personally powerful. I talk a lot in How to Be Single and Happy about my own history of my mom getting divorced when I was young and getting divorced a second time, and also kind of buying into this mindset that like you need to figure out how to have a happy relationship. And while I was in graduate school, I ended up getting engaged to someone who was like perfect on paper, but it didn't feel quite right in private moments. And I really had the courage to end my engagement, even though it felt humiliating, and really kind of applying these lessons to myself. How do I not ruminate, not lose myself in regret, not second guess myself or overanalyze what I could have done better, through some of the mindfulness-based tools that I love. And these tools have changed my life, and I just feel like they're too good to keep to myself. I want to share them with everyone.
I love that. And everybody that's listening, definitely get this first book, How to Be Single and Happy. It'll definitely change your life. I've also listened to it on Audible, and there's great. It's about purpose, right? Let's get into some of your favorite things that you can help our dear listeners with to feel like they have the steering wheel again of their own mind and their own life, and how to be happy during this time.
Sure. So, Bella, there's a few things that I think are really important for people to walk away with. The first thing is, like, if I'm saying happiness is not finding your person, what is happiness? Like, what do experts say happiness is? And I think it's helpful to actually look at the thieves of happiness, like what steals happiness off your plate. And in my mind, there's a few things that steal happiness. It's what I call happiness in the husband treadmill, which is just a riff off something called the hedonic treadmill, which is like this idea that people think that, this great job that you've been dreaming of, or this, incredible car, or having a certain number of dollars in your bank account will suddenly make you feel better and happy. But actually, experts are really clear that for most people, a big event, good or bad, does not dramatically change your day-to-day life. And so I think this belief that meeting your person is going to dramatically change your life, plus doing these mental traps that are so proven time and time again to torture us, cause depression and anxiety, rumination or regretting, which is kind of a variant of ruminating, this overthinking, overplaying, not being in the present, but kind of like living in this tornado of torturous thoughts, and then avoiding or kind of settling or suppressing, like stuffing your feelings and doing things that maybe feel okay short term but don't work for you long term, like continuing to date someone that you don't really like just because it feels less bad than being alone on a Friday night, or you want some sort of physical intimacy and don't want to sit with uncertainty. Those are some of the big thieves of unhappiness. And then I talk about ways to actually like reclaim your life. And so just on the first point about the husband treadmill, because people always ask me about this.
Yes, let's go there.
Yeah. So look, truly nothing that I say, whether in my books or with my clients, is like random ideas by Jenny Taitz. This is all based on research. And so I was really, like I said, before writing this book, I really dove into the research, and I was struck when trying to look at this question of like, how happy does marriage make you? And looking at, in a study that looked at more than 24,000 people. So this is not 24 people, this is 24,000 people.
24,000, 24K.
Yes. On average, I'm not going to ask you because you read the book, but on average, marriage makes us 1% happier. And so I'm not trying to disparage marriage or discourage coupling, but just to remember that 99% of happiness is within your hands right now. Right now, there's so much more happiness in your hands than all these sexist myths perpetuated in our culture are. And again, I'm married, I'm happily married. There's nothing wrong with wanting marriage, but the problem is putting your life on hold until you meet someone, which has so much to do with luck rather than likability.
I love that. So the 99% is in your hands today. You have the steering wheel of that.
Totally. And so much of that has to do with having a clear sense of your life purpose, how you want to show up in life. Remarkably, like having a clear sense of life purpose literally reduces like distress when you see upsetting things. It helps you cope better with disappointments. It gives you a sense of agency even when things feel out of your control. Really appreciating that, like, even this idea that a partner is like the path out of loneliness, like that is not what we know. Like, so many people need to really take a step back. Well, loneliness can be filled by so many different types of relationships. I love what Barbara Fredrickson says. She's a researcher at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, that, like, I'm going to butcher the quote, but something along the lines of like, it's a worldwide collapse of imagination to assume that partnership is like the path out of loneliness. Like, there's so many other incredible sources of loneliness that are a little bit counterintuitive. So I'll get into those. And then when it comes to happiness, we need to remember that so much of what makes us happy is being present in the moment. And so when we're on dating apps, when we're constantly checking, when we're thinking about like, how should I text this person back? How do I kind of like, what does it mean? Let me ask my friend what it means that this person has an ironed out plans and it's 4 p.m. Should I go or should I not go? We need to really learn to pivot into the present moment because, again, experts are really clear. My friend Matt Killingsworth at Harvard, who's now at Penn actually, but is really clear, like in tracking happiness. He has again, like really impressive data set. 200,000 people are, he texts them throughout the day through some computer generated program. What are you doing? What are you thinking about? How happy are you? And 50% of the time, our mind is wandering. And a wandering mind is not a happy mind. So even if you're online at the grocery store or sitting in traffic, letting your mind go wherever it wants to go without you kind of centering yourself is setting you up for less joy right now.
That's so profound. I mean, if you aren't thinking about this exact moment right now, you're somewhere in the future or you're somewhere in the past. And both of those create a lot of anxiety.
Both of those create a lot of anxiety. And even if you start thinking positively, like about an upcoming trip or something pleasant from the past, that is also a slippery slope because leaving this moment is a risky detour.
And are there any tips that you can give us besides, I mean, obviously mindfulness and being conscious of that, but if you're starting to feel sad, if you're starting to feel negative, how do we understand that it's time to pull ourselves back into the present moment?
Well, a huge thing that I talk about in the book is ruminating, this specifically because it can be a little hard for people to see, like thinking about something else. Maybe that's okay. Maybe that's relatively benign. Like thinking about what I'm having for dinner. Is that really going to hurt me? Probably not. But it does kind of, because then you can't like notice a cute puppy that's in your path or really appreciate like a beautiful flower that, is blooming in your neighbor's garden. But if you're ruminating, which is getting stuck in this like negative spiral, which a lot of us do, even when we're trying to tell ourselves that maybe it's helping us or we're going to land on some sort of epiphany, that is really problematic. And I talk a lot in my new book, Stress Resets, and I also talk about this in How to Be Single and Happy, about ways outside of ruminating. And one of the first things that we need to do is ask ourselves if we have positive beliefs about overthinking. Like a lot of times people think that they think about something long enough, they're going to get some sort of profound insight, or they're almost like their own psychoanalyst, or they're going to learn lessons that otherwise they wouldn't learn without the same investment of time. But I'm guessing you're a really smart person and you've spent a lot of time doing this. And if it hasn't worked for you so far, it might be worth just trying a behavioral experiment of putting that down and doing some other things. And so I talk through a lot of different strategies to break free of ruminating, like replacing why skills with how, like why thoughts, like why didn't this person get back to me? Why is it easier for other people to meet someone? Why did this person seem super interested the first 3 dates and then disappeared? With how kinds of thoughts, how can I move forward? How can I have a better night despite this disappointing news. And so shifting from something that's like unproductive and circular to something more productive is really helpful. And I also think it's really important. There's a lot of tools, but just a couple that I'll touch on briefly. Another one that I think is really profound is we don't want to just brush our feelings under the rug. It's okay to feel. It's okay to make space for your feelings. And a lot of times we do need to process our feelings. But when we're thinking in circular ways, we're not necessarily feeling our feelings. We're going deeper. We're just kind of, it's almost like a little news ticker in our minds. There's just like this kind of alert going on, but we're not giving it our full head and heart. And so actually giving yourself time, if you just went through something that really hurt you, you can do what is called expressive writing, which is another really proven research-backed approach where you write with a beginning, middle, and an end about something upsetting that happened. And researchers have found that doing this for a few days actually significantly reduces depression 6 months later. Wow. And so this isn't just like journaling, like just freely writing, but like going through with a beginning, middle, of an end and allowing yourself to feel, because you do need to feel. We need to like know how to kind of change the channel when we're on a horror story, and also like honor like the validity to our feelings. And so having both at your disposal is really, really helpful.
So you write about the beginning, the middle, and the end of this situation that's causing you sadness or grief or anger or whatever you're frustrated about, and write it all out in a story format kind of thing.
And really opening up about your deepest feelings. And for people that are interested in this, I go through a lot of details about it in Stress Resets. And also James Pennebaker is the pioneer of this concept called expressive writing, or this technique. And if you look up James Pennebaker, there's some prompts on his website through University of Texas at Austin, I believe.
I love this. And I want to go back to something you said, which is so important. You talked about your life purpose, right? And we think our purpose is, we'll be happy when we meet the lid to our pot, when we find this person. But give us a little bit of your philosophy around this life purpose and your values, so people can start to think about this in a really concrete way for themselves.
Sure. So a few things. A lot of times we focus on what we want to get. I want to get a guy that I'm really attracted to. I want to get a girl that I'm really attracted to. I want to get someone that shares my passions, my hobbies, has a similar life plan. We don't necessarily focus so much on how we want to show up. And values really are about how you want to show up. A lot of times we think we want this person to be a certain way, but I think an interesting question is like, how do I want to show up tonight? I want to show up non-judgmental, curious, full of self-compassion. I want to, be really present. Like there's so many things that we need to think about in terms of what we can do that's different than what we're going to get. And then I think it's hard for people day to day. It's like, oh yeah, I know my values, but it's really hard to make them tangible and user-friendly. And so I really like to do this thing with my clients, and I talk about it in How to Be Single and Happy, of creating a visual reminder, a life pie chart. If you can, listeners listening right now, you can do this. You could get a piece of paper and a pen and think about what are the different domains in your life that matter to you. So some of the various domains that matter to me include my health, my career, my family, my friendships, hobbies. I love exercise, so that's kind of a segment of my life pie. I like giving back. I mean, those are just some examples. And then I could note how I want to show up in each of those domains. So even exercise, it's not really performance-based. It's like compassion-based and more about showing up even when it's difficult rather than like when I'm in the mood. And so having a clear list and then actually visually representing the things that matter to you in the way that they matter in the pie chart. And so even if you do really want a partner, partner can't be more than like 20% of your life pie. I mean, you're really, shortening the other areas of your life that are those really meaningful facets of your life if you're making it all about one person. And so even people that are incredibly happily married, I think the partner can't be more than a quarter of their life pie chart. And so I think really thinking about it, and even if you're listening to this and you do very much want a partner, you can still have that on your life pie chart, but just have this reminder that this is a smaller segment of a lot of what's within your hands.
Yeah, to your point, this is why we use the metaphor at Smart Dating Academy of finding the lid to your pot. A pot is complete as it is. A lid is an accoutrement. It's an accessory that makes it nice, but that's about it. But you are complete as a pot.
Yeah.
The pot can cook it all. So I love that. I love that. Yeah, really. And think about, ladies and gentlemen, as you think about you and your purpose, and think about all the love that you already have in your life, right? How you show up, right, is super important. But the love that you already have, sometimes we forget about that when we're on the husband treadmill or the partner treadmill. It's like, look at all the other things that are going so well in my life, and look at all the love that I already have.
And the love I can create. A lot of people think that love is something that they exude in a romantic relationship. But one of my favorite things to do when I was really struggling with my breakup and dating in the aftermath, it's very weird from going to like planning your wedding to going on a first date. It was like visiting a woman in hospice, like bringing this woman in hospice ice cream, like on Fridays, was like filled my cup with love and so meaningful. And I personally continue to love practice called loving kindness meditation, which I learned from Sharon Salzberg, who's a really wonderful meditation teacher who has a lot of great YouTube videos about this. And she has downloads available on her website where you could download loving kindness meditation led by her. That's really beautiful. She's one of the people that brought this to the West. Wow. And there's research. This sounds kind of new age or hokey, but like there's research that repeating statements of loving kindness in a specific way, starting with someone that naturally evokes warm feelings, yourself, a person that you care about that's going through something difficult, a stranger that you can bring to mind that you don't necessarily know well, like a neighbor or someone that you see at work that you don't have a personal relationship with, someone that's a little bit difficult, and then all beings, people that repeatedly bring that list of people to mind and wish them statements of loving kindness. May this person be happy, healthy, safe, live with ease. You could even try doing that for yourself for just a moment. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease. That genuinely creates like a feeling of warmth, interconnection with other people. And it reduces self-criticism in people that tend to be very critical. So that's another one of my favorite tools to reduce ruminating and also increase contact with the present moment.
Yeah, and especially if you do it to yourself and someone you love and have warm feelings for. And what I've found also is if there's something in my life or someone that's causing me some stress, or I'm letting it cause me stress, I send the loving kindness meditation to them, and it automatically it tamps me down as well. And it makes me feel better. And it makes me feel like I'm giving them something. I'm sending them love through the universe, right? The act of giving, to your point, bringing ice cream to somebody in hospice makes you feel like you have done something loving, because love is ultimately an act and a decision,
Beautiful.
Not a feeling.
Beautiful. Yeah, I personally found this so helpful when I was going on dates. If I felt like meh or like nervous, I really hope this person is into me. Or if I was going into a party alone where everyone else seemed to have like a partner, rather than kind of thinking about this is awkward or I wonder what they're going to think. No. Like, I don't deserve to have to feel like there's something wrong with me or I need to do better. I can just wish statements of loving kindness to myself. And that's just a good reminder that our mind plays tricks on us, and we need to kind of observe that and not necessarily choose that.
Everything you say is so packed with nuggets and takes me along a rabbit trail. So I want to ask you, you said something a few minutes ago about showing up to something with non-judgment. You wrote this great little anecdote as I was getting ready for our interview today about wanting to show up to a date with someone who ended up being your husband in a place of non-judgment. I don't know, and I know I'm kind of hitting you with this right out of the blue, but can you talk about that? Because I found that really profound and so great that you were able to do the things that you did and extend to him what you did.
Yeah, so the first date that I went on with Adam, who's my now husband of 13 years, but we've been together, I guess, close to 15 years. No, I'm sorry, I'm making things up. We've been together for 13 years, and we've been married for 11 years. Sorry, I'm terrible with tracking time.
We all are.
Yes. Someone just asked me how old I was, and I like butchered it by 3 years, not on purpose, just because it's like,
what year is this? It doesn't matter for certain, yes. Right? You're like, wait, how old am I? I have to think about that all the time.
No, but I think we're living in a really meaningful time right now where there's so much information out there on social media, on podcasts. And so people are always trying to hack letting things unfold and trying to save time with putting rules on situations that might not necessarily apply. And so my first day with Adam, I was blessed to not be in this place of trying to use other people's heuristics to save time or make decisions. But literally, I remember it was yesterday, we had plans to meet up, and he texted me 30 minutes before we were supposed to meet, maybe an hour before we were supposed to meet, was like, hey, can we push it by an hour? And that was kind of annoying to me because I'm a morning person and I try to go to bed relatively early, and I have commitments, I need to be on a bicycle first thing in the morning at my spin class. And so I was like, you know what, it's okay. I mean, again, I practice everything that I preach. I'm really immersed in, especially when things are hard, I'm really immersed in loving kindness, meditation, mindfulness. And so I was like, sure, yeah, you want to meet an hour later? That's fine. And again, I wouldn't put myself on the line. I'm going to be graceful with him, but I'm also going to be self-compassionate of when it's time for me to call it a night because I maintain a sleep routine, that's also fine. And so we went out to eat, and it was fine, and it was lovely. And then he was walking to the subway. We were living in New York City, and I lived a block away from the subway. And rather than him walking me the block, and I would love someone to be chivalrous, I try to be very polite. He didn't walk me a block to my apartment. And he just was like, okay, it was nice meeting you, and took the subway. And I was like, okay, a part of me kind of thinks I would prefer someone to walk me to my door. But also, I'm fine, and I don't know him, and he seemed polite and respectful, and I'll just let this kind of sit here and wait to get more information before I make conclusions about whether this person is polite. And I don't know how long into our relationship, but at some point I mentioned, do you remember our first date? And I kind of playfully was like, it was so weird. I thought it was so weird that you didn't walk me home. And he was like, I didn't want you to think that I was trying to encroach on your space or invite myself over. And so I thought what I thought was being rude was actually his way of trying to communicate respect. And so there's so many mixed messages that we create in our mind, and ambiguous situations that we can misinterpret that can breed loneliness and negativity. But it's so helpful to kind of let things unfold.
Yeah. And I love how you did that. It's okay, I'm going to show up to this date. And yes, it was a little bit weird to have him push the date and not walk you home. But sitting back to say, how did I feel? Did I actually enjoy that date? And if the answer is yes, okay, I'll give it another shot. And for you, had you stayed in that place of, you know what, if I was important to you, you wouldn't have rescheduled. You would have been organized. And the things that we tend to do, which ultimately just comes from our own self stuff, right? I need to feel important. And if you don't value my time in the same way, then you must not think I'm important, which means I'm not important. And here you're like, no, I had fun. I'm good. Let's give this another shot. And now you found the lid to your pot.
Yeah, and there were so many things I did during that time because, again, I truly, wholeheartedly, every part of me really bought into this idea that I am prescribing, because it would be inauthentic for me to prescribe it if I didn't believe it. But I'm whole. My life is complete. If I meet someone, great. If not, I don't. So I really was just like radically genuine throughout our relationship. And so I think like 6 weeks into us dating, I was like, oh, I'm heading to LA next week. And he was like, oh, what are you doing in LA? And I was like, oh, I've always wanted to move there. And there were some job opportunities that I was going to look into. And again, like other people might have been cagey or white lied. And that led to like a really meaningful, honest conversation. And I think I would have ruptured our level of connection by not being honest. It led to kind of this thing of like, well, how serious are you about your intended like timeline? Like, are you flexible about leaving for LA at some other point if we continue to get to know each other and like each other? And I was really pleasantly surprised. In my head, there was no way, given the nature of his work, that he was going to be able to move to Los Angeles. But he made it really clear, like he would be open to making things, to compromising and seeing what could happen if I was a little flexible with my, couldn't move right away, but down the line.
And look what you did. And now you're in LA.
Now I'm in LA. Yes. Yes. And also, Bella, I think it's helpful also to just say a huge thing that I try to teach my patients, and this is in How to Be Single and Happy, and it's also in Stress Resets, is leaning into your own wise mind, your inner wisdom, because I think it's very tempting if something matters to you and you're anxious about it to go around asking everyone what they think. Yeah. Should I mention that I'm going to interview for jobs in LA? Or should I not? And every friend of mine was like, you're ending the relationship tonight. Like you're saying that is like a huge red flag for him. And I'm like, I don't care at this point. Like, I just want to be me. Thank you. Yes. But no, I think one of my big hopes is for people to reclaim their sense of their own intuition and inner wisdom.
I love that so much. And well, you've told us a lot of amazing things. Tell us about stress resets and what we can do in our lives to do this. I'm so excited.
Yeah. So, stress, a lot of times think stress is something that happens to us, that work is really overwhelming. People are really disappointing. We feel stressed. And so much stress is like life circumstances that it is really hard that a lot of us are expected to be on all the time. And a lot of people are disappointing and aren't as thoughtful as we would like them to be. But I think that there's so much we can do to not take stress and multiply it. And so I think the downside to being human is something upsetting happens. And we literally, it's like taking a stain and spreading it in a way that makes it worse. Something upsetting happens. We can't stop thinking about it. We take something neutral and make it terrible in our minds. Then we judge our body's stress response. Oh no, my heart rate's too high. I need to calm down. It seems like I'm anxious to other people and I need to down regulate. And then we do things to avoid. We procrastinate, or we treat ourselves in ways that ultimately don't serve us, like overspending or substances. And so life is very stressful, but there are ways that we can exponentially free ourselves by appreciating the stress cycle, the ways that we take something upsetting, think the worst, judge our body, and then check out in ways that undermine our inherent sense of self-efficacy. And so there's so many examples I can give, but one of the inspirations for writing this book is just knowing that so many people, 30 million Americans, lean on benzodiazepines, medications like Xanax and Klonopin, to try to take the stress off. And these medications are so interesting to me because when you need to be your sharpest, they dull your ability to think clearly. And long-term use of these medications actually leads to cognitive decline. And so I just find it heartbreaking that people could take something in a hard moment and then become dependent on it. And it could really haunt them both in the moment and down the line. And so I, again, was very interested in what are things that work as well as benzodiazepines that don't have side effects, and was blown away that there's so many things that work wonders and come with a priceless feeling of self-efficacy, this feeling that you can count on yourself. You don't need to do something outside of yourself that yes, maybe works short term, but then long-term backfires. And so I think there's so many things we can do in my book, because it's ironic to think about like reading a book when you're stressed really breaks down like how can you reset stress with your mind, body, and behavior in minutes. Like literally, like you could look at this like a cookbook. There's a couple pages on techniques for your mind, for your body, for your behavior, all rooted in research. And then because we shouldn't just go from crisis to crisis, there's also a full host of buffers for your mind, body, and behavior, things that you could do preventatively. So you're not just going from hard time to hard time, but actually creating a life that kind of like raises your baseline.
Okay, I love this. So can you give us a good stress reset? Let's say somebody doesn't message us back or ghosts us, or we're walking in to a date and we're feeling really nervous because we're in this place of scarcity, or we feel like, oh my gosh, this person, it's like the one normal person that's come across my app that's professional and seems like they can utter a couple of straight sentences. Like, tell us how we can regulate, to your point, without a glass of wine at home or a benzo, where we feel like we have this agency and we can do it.
Yeah, and there's so many, and different stress resets work for different people. But even the act of slow breathing, like breathing in for 5 and out for 5 through your nose, you gently close your lips, you could breathe in for 5 and out for 5, quickly like creates a calm alertness. And so instead of you thinking about this person didn't message me back, like what does that mean? Doing that really harnesses your full attention and gives you this tremendous sense of appreciation and expansiveness. And then you could actually do the thing that you were meant to be doing. Like if you had in mind you were going to finish a like dreaded work task that's been hanging over you, and then you aren't doing it because you're like overthinking and then bouncing around different websites, like, and texting different friends, complaining and asking them what they think. Doing some of that and then doing like the thing that would actually make you feel freest and best. And I know this doesn't sound that sexy, but there's something so good about feeling like, I got this. No one is going to get in my way. Like, I know what matters to me, and I'm worth it. Like, I'm not going to let someone not texting me back throw me off my game. Like, no. And again, there's so many things. And I like stacking different resets. And so I also really like half smiling, which is very interesting. Like if you ever so slightly raise the upper corners of your lips, like a half smile is really an statement, but that's what it's called. It's really a quarter of a smile. Ever so slightly raise the upper corners of your lips, that automatically releases tension in your forehead. And that kind of creates a landscape where you're more accepting almost from the outside in. So it's very hard if you're like frustrated in traffic and you're half smiling to be a magnet for those annoying like thoughts of like, come on, let's move, or I can't take this, like what's like, I'm going to be late. Deliberately half smiling, and then you could tack that on with the slow breathing. There's a lot of things you could do with your body. So your body is your best pharmacy and you don't need anything else. And there's a lot of things also for your mind. Breathing in wise, breathing out mind, really appreciating that you have this tremendous internal wisdom. I also really love personally, just a big thing I teach with my patients that I find personally incredibly powerful is really appreciating that emotions come in waves. It makes total sense that you are very upset right now. If you face disappointment, it makes total sense. We don't need to push that away. We don't need to distract ourselves from that. But also the belief that we often get into, because again, like we have a knack for multiplying our stress, like the belief that like, I'm going to feel this way forever. It's going to get worse. It's going to be so unbearable. Like I'll never be able to cope again or find joy again. I mean, those things don't help us. And really, I talk about ways to appreciate this experientially, but like to really realize like emotions come in waves. Like, it's okay to feel this, and this is not going to last. When something upsetting happens in my life, I allow myself to entirely feel it without the added layer of forever, worse, it's terrible. It's okay. I can fully accept it, process it, and know that this is true in this moment, but it might not be true 2 months from now or next year or 5 years from now.
And telling yourself that, I love how you're I love how you frame that emotions are waves, and waves aren't infinite, right? Another wave might come, but you can be feeling despondent in this moment, but to know it's a wave, it's going to end at some point. So, and when you start to think that, you'll probably start to get through that wave even faster, because so much of it's in our minds.
And I imagine everyone listening to this podcast is incredibly growth-oriented and intelligent and wonderful. And with all due respect, like, we are all terrible at what's called effective forecasting, predicting our future feelings. And so I know that you're very smart, but also we're all just, we all have a prediction error when it comes to predicting how we'll feel in the future.
It's so true. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And you have, not only do you have this book, but you just came out with cards, stress reset cards. Tell us about these. We love ourselves a good set of cards.
Yeah, so Stress Resets, again, is designed almost like a cookbook. You could flip to any page. The first part of the book is like a chapter book, which goes through the rationale, so you understand like why the resets and buffers could be helpful. And it gets into some of the science on benzodiazepines and things like cannabis and alcohol and alternatives. And because I want things to be really practical and really accessible, a lot of times people just say like they have a hard time remembering these things in the moment. And so I created a corresponding with the resets and the buffers in the book. There's also an accompanying deck, which is actually really cute. It's like something that you could put on a coffee table. I have them in the waiting room for my office, and I will put these on the coffee table in my house. But they're really pretty. They have cute illustrations, and they're just quick reminders of like, okay, when your thinking is all over the place and spinning you into a crisis, you could try anchoring. This is how to do it. This is why it works. You know, if you're currently like your mind is taking you somewhere that you don't want it to go, take a moment right now, and we could do this together, of feeling your feet on the floor, doing a quick 3-point check. What am I thinking? What am I feeling in my body? What am I doing? What do I feel like doing? Come back to the present moment. So these are just quick little reminders to create this new muscle memory where we can kind of change how we approach difficult moments and undo habits that cause us distress, and replace those with like virtuous cycles.
I love that. And do you feel like so much of it, Dr. Johnny, comes back to coming back to the present moment and where you are?
A lot of it is about mindfulness and acceptance and effectiveness, like doing what works.
Oh, you're right. I mean, I can think of 100 times in the last 3 days I could have used these stress reset tips, but just thinking now, what you're saying makes so much sense. It's just inhale, exhale, put your feet on the ground, re-steel where you are at this moment. And know that these feelings come in waves, and it's okay to feel them. Don't avoid. Talk a little bit, what we all try to avoid. Is it even possible?
Yeah, I mean, avoidance backfires, and I'm all about like 100% acceptance and 100% change. And so acceptance doesn't mean that you're not going to change. It means like if you want something, you can actually, like, by accepting, you conserve your energy and you can channel more to doing the things that matter to you. And so, I mean, it's comical. Like, people joke that like they come up with every procrastination tactic of like, let me not only make the bed, but like wash the sheets and like order better sheets, and then make the bed perfectly, and then start like finally decluttering my closet. But it's like, when the thing that's actually going to make you feel much better is like applying for the job that you've been thinking like might make you feel more fulfilled career-wise after you've been very unfulfilled. And it's like, I think it's so fascinating for us to just take a step back and look at the ways we all do this and how can we do better. And again, like, small things make a huge difference. Like, even just making a schedule of like, this is the time that I'm going to like work on looking at my resume or looking at LinkedIn for 20 minutes. I know it seems like it's easier said than done, but again, I want people to feel like they have full freedom to live the life that they want. And if people are remarkably good at getting better with the right tools.
I love that. We have our clients at Smart Dating Academy do 15 minutes in the morning on dating apps, to your point, and then 15 minutes in the evening, and turn off the notifications during the day so that you don't feel like it's sucking up every ounce of your energy, that you're on the treadmill, that this is part of your job. You put it into its compartments, and then you're present to it at that time. And then okay, it's 15 minutes and I want to make the best of it. And I'm going to put myself in a positive place. And I know that there are great people out there, and I'm looking to make new connections. And when you look at if you look at the apps in that shorter period of time with that mindset, it's amazing how you suddenly start to see a lot more interesting people than when you went in with this, oh God, I hate the apps. This is so dreadful. There are no good people left. I just don't even want to do this.
Right. No, that actually speaks to such a powerful point, because I think some people think avoiding is like totally ignoring, but it also, some people overdo it, and you're avoiding like present moment at work if you're on your apps. And so I think a lot of people go into like not at all or overdoing it with the apps. Like I see so many people that are using them too much and then not at all. And so coming up with this middle path of like, I'm going to be intentional, and then I'm going to be present in other parts of my life. And so there is like, some people might be thinking like, I don't avoid, I'm the opposite, but there's like avoiding uncertainty and perfectionism are also forms of avoidance.
No, 100%. And, before, I was just thinking as you were speaking, is there, something off the top of your head, maybe from a stress reset, or a better thing if somebody's sitting down to get on an app, right? Which for so many listeners is like, oh my God, do I have to do this? They tell me, I can hear you in my head going, okay, be grateful for the apps, because if not, how would I have access to all these people? Is there anything that you can say, maybe from the book, that might be a good way to improve your mindset before you log on to an app?
Well, I mean, there's so many things, but I think even just making it part of your routine, because it's like, if I'm going to do this for 15 minutes, I don't need my mind to be like narrating how good or bad this is going to be. I think non-judgmental stance, this just is what it is. We don't know. We have no idea if it's going to be good or bad. And I think bringing like mindful awareness to your thoughts, like you could see your thoughts almost like, skywriting rather than be one with them, and take them very seriously.
Absolutely. It's funny. One of the things I sometimes tell people to do when they're looking at the apps is to get into a place of no judgment, or changing the story in your head. Look at the person that comes across your apps and tell yourself a good story about that person. Whether they're good for you or not, it doesn't matter. Look at that person and say, oh, you know what? I bet this guy's an amazing uncle. He's probably the fun uncle. And just doing that, suddenly, when you put your own positive spin on it, you might want to poke through and look at the other photos.
Yeah. And again, I think it's so helpful to just realize that we're so unable to predict the future, as tempting as it feels, and to just be curious and to kind of approach life with this curiosity rather than like negative forecasting.
Because it's just more fun, right?
Yeah, and it's more accurate. I mean, there's so much more to people than we could ever imagine.
You're right. And the story of you and your husband says exactly that, right? And you got into that space and you told him later and you saw that he had a different story.
Yeah. And again, we have this with everyone that we come across. And I think even looking at the story of how happy you can be in this moment in time is also really important.
Oh, yeah. And you can be happier probably at almost any moment in time.
Regardless of your circumstances, by changing your mindset and leaning into your values and doing all the things that we know work for happiness, like having community and health and being intentional and kind of balancing pleasure and feelings of accomplishment.
Beautiful. You are my wise brain says how incredibly wise you are and how grateful I am to have been able to share you with our audience. I know they're going to come away from this going, okay, wow, I've got a lot more control than I think I do. And for those of you who are interested, which I would highly suggest, we'll have links to Dr. Jenny's books about how to be single and be happy, and to stress resets, and maybe even the new cards if that works for you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Awesome. And if people want to know more about you, where should they go to find you?
You can visit me at drjennytaitz.com, and I'm also on Instagram, but I'm so obsessed with being mindful that I don't check my messages there that often, but I try to post nuggets here and there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on Smart Daters. I hope you feel as in the driver's seat right now after listening to Dr. Jenny as I do, that there's so many things that you have the steering wheel to in your life to make it better in every way. And I hope that something resonated with you today about the power that you have to be single and be happy and to reset your own stress. And as soon as I stop talking, I want you to take that deep breath, like Dr. Jenny said, breathe in for 5, breathe out for 5, and maybe even send somebody a loving kindness meditation today. So until our next episode, I bid you farewell, and I bid you a happy and purposeful week.